are sick, your head is pounding, your throat is on fire, and the only thing standing between you and death is a healer crouching beside you, holding a cup of something you cannot identify. It smells like earth, like rot, like something that should never enter a human body. But you drink it anyway. Because in this world, this is medicine, and it has been working, in ways your modern mind would struggle to explain, for hundreds of thousands of years. For the vast majority of human history, there were no pharmacies, no clinical trials, no sterile packaging. There was only the world around you, the accumulated knowledge of every healer who came before, and a willingness to try things that look, by today's standards, absolutely insane. Some of those things were useless. Some were genuinely dangerous. But some, and this is what makes the story so strange, actually worked. This is the story of the weirdest medicine your ancestors ever used. And by the end, you might be surprised how much of it is still inside you. Let us start with something that sounds more like a horror story than a healing practice. Around 7,000 years ago, healers in multiple parts of the world, from ancient Mesopotamia to pre-Columbian Peru to Neolithic Europe, began drilling holes into the skulls of living people. The procedure is called trepanation. The Greek physician Hippocrates described it in detail. Skulls recovered from sites across Europe, Africa, and South America show the bore marks clearly. And here is the part that should stop you cold. Many of those patients survived. Anthropologist John Verano, who spent decades studying pre-Columbian trepanned skulls from Peru, found evidence of bone regrowth around the wound edges, meaning the patient lived long enough after the procedure for the skull to begin healing. In some cases, a single individual had been trepanned multiple times. The survival rates in ancient Peru, Verano estimated, were comparable to those in 19th-century Europe, where surgeons had access to metal instruments and basic anesthesia. Why would anyone drill a hole in another person's skull? The reasons varied: migraines, seizures, mental illness, head injuries that caused swelling and pressure. What the ancient healers could not explain in neurological terms, they understood instinctively. Sometimes the skull needed to be opened to relieve what was trapped inside. It was crude, it was terrifying, and in skilled hands, it worked often enough to become standard practice across cultures that had never met each other. Now consider something quieter, something that happened not in a ritual space but out in the open. In forests and along riverbanks. Wherever your ancestors walked. Plants. For tens of thousands of years before written language existed, your ancestors were building an encyclopedia in their heads. Every healer, every grandmother, every wandering elder carried a library of botanical knowledge accumulated across generations. And modern pharmacology has spent decades catching up to what they already knew. The Ebers Papyrus, an Egyptian medical document dating to roughly 1550 BCE, lists over 700 plant-based remedies. Many of them, willow bark for pain, garlic for infection, castor oil for digestive complaints, are still chemically valid today. Willow bark contains salicin, the natural precursor to aspirin. Garlic contains allicin, a compound with genuine antimicrobial properties. Your ancestors did not know why these things worked. They knew that they did. Ethnobotanist Paul Allen Cox has documented similar patterns across isolated indigenous cultures. Communities with no historical contact independently discovered the same medicinal plants, often for the same conditions. This is not coincidence. This is tens of thousands of years of empirical trial and error conducted on the most important experiment imaginable, the human body. But some remedies were not plants. Some of them were animals. Leeches, for example. Your instinct is probably to recoil. But the use of medicinal leeches stretches back at least 2,500 years. Documented in ancient Indian Ayurvedic texts and later adopted by Greek, Arabic, and European physicians. The leech's saliva contains hirudin, a powerful anticoagulant, a substance that prevents blood from clotting. In the 21st century, hirudin-derived compounds are used in modern surgery and stroke treatment. The FDA approved medicinal leeches as a medical device in 2004. What your ancestors' healer pressed against a swollen limb in 500 BCE is now available in hospital pharmacies. And then there is honey. Ancient Egyptian physicians packed wounds with honey. So did ancient Greeks, Romans, and healers across sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. For centuries, this was dismissed as folk superstition. Then researchers began analyzing honey at a molecular level and discovered something remarkable. Honey produces hydrogen peroxide. It is hygroscopic, meaning it draws moisture out of bacterial cells and kills them by dehydration. Specific varieties, Manuka honey in particular, have been shown in clinical trials to fight antibiotic-resistant bacteria, including MRSA. The same substance your ancestors spread on a battle wound thousands of years ago is now being studied as a solution to one of modern medicine's most dangerous problems. Let us reconstruct a moment. Somewhere in ancient Mesopotamia, roughly 4,000 years ago, a child is feverish. Her mother brings her to a healer, an ASU, which is what the Babylonians called a medical practitioner, as distinct from an ashipu, who handled the spiritual dimension of illness. The ASU examines the child, assesses her symptoms, and begins preparing a remedy described in a cuneiform tablet discovered at Nippur, one of the oldest medical texts ever found. It includes thyme, which contains thymol, a compound still used in modern antiseptics. It includes mustard. It includes something that translates roughly as riverbank mud, which may have contained natural antibacterial clay minerals. The healer does not know the word antibiotic, but the child's fever breaks by morning. This is the pattern that keeps appearing across ancient medical traditions. Not magic dressed up as medicine, but observation, pattern recognition, and accumulated wisdom, applied in ways we are only now beginning to fully understand. Some of the stranger remedies did not survive scrutiny. Dung poultices, used by ancient Egyptians on open wounds, turned out to introduce bacteria rather than fight them. Bloodletting, practiced enthusiastically from ancient Greece through the 19th century, weakened patients more than it helped them. Mercury, used as a treatment for syphilis in the Renaissance, was often more lethal than the disease itself. Your ancestors made catastrophic errors. They also made discoveries that outlasted the civilizations that made them. The line between genius and desperation was very thin when every illness was potentially fatal and the only laboratory was the living human being in front of you. So what does this mean for you now? The World Health Organization estimates that roughly 80% of the world's population still relies primarily on traditional plant-based medicine. Not as a curiosity, as their primary healthcare. The plants your ancestors catalogued, the remedies refined over thousands of years of collective human experience, are not primitive. They are the original database. Modern pharmacology did not replace them, it translated them, extracted their active compounds, and synthesized them at scale. When you take aspirin, you are taking a version of what your ancestor chewed from a willow branch. When a surgeon applies medicinal leeches to restore circulation after reconstructive surgery, they are doing what an Ayurvedic healer did 2.5 millennia ago. When researchers test Manuka honey against drug-resistant bacteria, they are validating what an Egyptian physician packed into a wound before the pyramids at Giza were finished. The weirdest medicine your ancestors ever used was not weird to them. It was everything they had, and in their hands. Without instruments or degrees or clinical protocols, they kept the human species alive through infections, injuries, and plagues that should have ended us. You are here because the medicine worked. The next time you open a bottle of pills, remember, somewhere in that formula is the ghost of a healer crouching beside you, holding a cup of something you cannot identify, telling you to drink.